Hello! Welcome to Gen Z Meets World podcast.
I am Aisha.
I'm Ahmed, and today we'll be talking about communities and like the sense of community and communities.
And if we were to look at the definition of community on the Oxford dictionary, like one of the dictionaries on that we have, but then like Oxford dictionary is one of the dictionaries we always refer to for English definitions. It says that community is a group of people living in the same place, or a group of people who have like similar interests. It says here particular characteristic in common, which means that it can be a particular characteristic, and oftentimes it is like an interest. It can also be actually like just characteristic, like for example a community of people of a certain race or ethnic
Demographic.
Religion, like it can be that's also like a community of people. But then oftentimes when we're talking about community, it's like more to like similar interests rather than
That's the most common version, at least.
And then there's like the community, a group of people, which is usually like, if you want an example of that, it should be like a neighborhood or like a country,
which I feel like actually it's kind of like goes back to the same definition somewhat, because they still share the same. It's something similar in common.
It is a characteristic, which is like they live in the same place. So that's probably like the definition. And then there's also like the sense of community. And like a community, in any kinds of community, the many different types of community, there is that sense of community that kind
within the people of the community, members of the community.
So there is that sense, like that bond, which is kind of like what creates the community. Like, because
without that bond, they're not
they're just people living together. They're just people living together. They are not like, I do not know whether like by definition they would, whether or not they would still be translated as defined as a community.
But at least it doesn't feel like a community when you don't know each other, when you do not have anything to like feel together. Then it feels less like a community.
It doesn't feel like a community.
It's just these bunch of random people in the place.
Yeah. So one of like, if we were to like think of like communities, you often think of neighbourhoods.
That's the closest you could find. Where you live.
For me, well, that's up to interpretation, but it's like the easiest example that you can find usually, because when you think of community, you think of people living together, you think of a neighborhood, and you refer back to your neighborhood. So like our neighborhood definitely still has that sense of community. I think like we would often for example, like if there's something that happens, we would all as a community
work
having
together,
that sense of community, together communicate to help the community. So like, but I remember one case in particular when there was a thunderstorm, and then because of that thunderstorm, a tree fell down and blocked the road.
Was basically in front of our house, just a bit to the right.
Yeah. Not exactly in front of our house,
a bit,
but it was the road in front of our house. So it blocked the road, and then one of our neighbors noticed it, and then I can't remember, they called the other, I think it was something like that. And then we like called. Everyone called each other, and then like they all went out of the house. Like no one told the other to go out of the house, but everyone, not like everyone, but a number of people went out. Like in our case, our father went out. They went out with like saws and all that to like
break
cut
break the tree down into pieces and bring them.
Not break, cut.
Cut, yes, cut the tree into pieces and put it aside.
Yeah, because
it's impossible to bring the entire tree.
And the tree was like stuck to the trunk. Yeah. And to cut at that point is like a bit hard. So like but then like everyone coming together to do that, and everyone like spending that much time with each other, kind of like creates that stronger bond and that sense of community in the community. And it's like what builds the neighborhood closer, makes the neighborhood grow closer. And also we can see like during like Ramadan or Eid, where we like share food with each other, even not during Ramadan or Eid,
I mean,
but then
we just exchange foods.
But then like it definitely is more often like because it's like sort of like an event, and you're like sharing with like certain kind of like spirit. and that also makes the neighborhood, grow closer. And in fact, I'd say that is one advantage of like COVID. Like, I mean, silver lining.
Silver lining, yeah.
A silver lining where, like, because like you are concerned about yourself and you like start thinking about like your neighbor,
other people, yeah.
And then and then the neighbors who are doing better tries to help out the neighbors who are doing less
better,
less fortunate. Yeah. So
less fortunate.
Yeah. So like everyone's helping around. That builds a sense of community. So that's like in the sense of like neighborhood. But then like I like to define it as like a physical community, because there is also the other kind of community, which is like in line of the similar interest community, which is like, but then it exists on like a virtual space. Because like with the advancements and like innovation of like technology, people can now like people can commute from one place to another easily, and so they could build that similar interest community easier. Like you can like gather if you're like art people, you can gather at some art gallery and get together. And like remember when we were younger, we often like our father would bring us to like art galleries.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then usually when we go to the art galleries, it's like for a book launch, because we're like more into like books. But then like the people who would go to that book launch would be like book people.
Yeah.
So like
and we're
that is like
each other again.
Yeah. So we have
that
sense of
books. And they came from like all over from other states.
And it's only possible because of like advancement of technology. I mean, once upon a time, some people may have traveled far, but it's not as easy. And so like
I mean, just to go for this thing, which happens, I wouldn't say it happens too often, but then it happens many times. It can happen
often,
quite often,
depending on how active you are.
Yeah. So you're not going to go on all those old vehicles through
because
all without any roads.
One is like vehicle, the other is just walking.
Yeah, that's just walking. Yeah.
So but then also like advancement of technology, like you have mobile phones and computers, and that also is like sort of like, instead of like you don't need to even commute from one physical place to another, you just have to commute from one virtual space to another,
which
and
you could do from either your home
because
or anywhere you
vehicle,
are. Yeah,
yeah. So that time you need traveling is the time you need
loading
looking
the
up.
page.
Yeah, exactly.
And going to like where's this this place? Okay, there it is. And waiting for that to load.
That also creates like that sense of community, and that's like a community that was not possible once upon a time. Like it makes like before this, that having vehicle and being able to commute to a place like already has created like, because like otherwise you just be in your community. It's true that people would be more prone to live together at one place when you have a similar something. There has to be a similar
background, similar demographic. That's typical.
Or even if you are like a little bit different, like you don't have much of a similarity, you will be somewhat of an outcast. All of these other people will be together, like sorry for that one guy, but then like it's not like
and eventually those, generally speaking, they will assimilate, and eventually true. Like especially for a lot of communities, the other people will like welcome that one strange person, and
some
like try to
some communities don't.
Yeah, true. But there's a lot of cases where they would like try to help them feel at home. I think
what I mean, in an idealistic world, yes, but then there are some places where people don't.
True.
But I think yes, it is true that in general, definitely Malays, that's like a culture where you just welcome people
who came.
So that kind of like was like the community once upon a time. Like it's true that you have a certain kind of interest, but now like you can specifically look for a certain community with a certain characteristic. Like you can
across borders.
Once upon a time, like after like the advancement of technology that made it easier for you to commute, it was easier for you to get to places with similar interests. But now it's like you can even fine tune it, like a specific interest with a specific group of age and a specific whatever,
because it's quite hard for someone from let's say in the middle of South Africa to commute to somewhere in North Russia. I mean,
except if they are very rich and they have private planes. But yeah, so it like breaks borders. Like, you can, and it's like across cultures. Like once upon a time, you have in a country people from different backgrounds. Now it's like all over the world, where you don't even change to like live in one place, because when you live in one place, when you move over to a certain place, you tend to assimilate. Not everyone does, but but it's like what you should.
Yeah, it's what you should
move somewhere. Like not like necessarily have to get rid of your whole identity, but
like
the whole do what the Romans do.
Yeah, do what the Romans do. Yes.
So but then now when you're like in this virtual community, you are still in your country with your own cultural stuff. So like that kind of like meeting is like something that you don't often find, and at some places, physically, it is harder for you to find a group people of the same interest, of a certain interest. Certain interests, then it might be hard for you to find people who are interested in certain things, particular things, in that group. And then now with like technology, you can just like look it up, and then you can find them or not. But
sometimes it's still hard.
Yeah, there is that
niche
possibility.
Yeah.
So that that's like, I'd say like a very high advantage, and so like you have people who don't feel so like cast out, because you have
people who actually share the same interest, rather than you're kind of like this. Well, people don't. It doesn't necessarily be that people say that you're weird, but then you feel weirded out when nobody shares the same interest as you do. So this opens to a lot more,
possibilities. Yeah, and all that. Yeah. So, but then there is, for me at least, there is one disadvantage of that, in the sense that, there's a few disadvantage, but then like, there's like one thing that's like, with that ease, you tend to ignore, like, because like with that ease, and it feels so good to be in the space where you feel like it's your home, regardless of whether or not it is, because like the thing is that when you choose to be there, and when you feel like you made that choice and decision, and when you feel like this is, because I think there is this study by the University of California, I think, where they said that something around the lines of, when there is this virtual space, when you're in together, it is this like place where you can go to immediately, and sort of like without any sort of like third party kind of interference, like you can be freely yourself, and like with that sense of anonymity, because there is, even if you post your picture, like your profile picture is your face, there is still a sense of anonymity when you're
if you just post a picture of your face, nobody will actually know your name. That's
even if you have your name, like even if you're being the thing is that even if you're being transparent, you still there is still a sense of anonymity, because you don't actually see them when you're interacting. And when you are like just typing and then sending, it doesn't feel, you may feel like it is,
even if you're like on a voice chat, there's still that barrier.
You may feel like it is. The thing is that some people feel like, there isn't any barrier. You feel like this is home, this is the communication. But our human nature responses does detect that it is not, the exact communication. And so there is this one study which I have been trying to find before we recorded this, but I couldn't find it. They did it on a sample of like people
who try to put it in the description, hopefully.
If I can find it.
Yeah, if you can find it.
Who use like specifically they tested it on Facebook, that even though they feel like they are communicating, but then their body doesn't, it's sort of like when the concept of like motion sickness. Where sort of like you get confused, and so you feel like there's an interaction when actually there isn't, and that may lead to, not necessarily, but it may lead to things like loneliness and of depression and stuff like that. And actually, I think a lot of us now can agree to that, because of like after COVID happened, you are upset that you don't get to meet them physically, you know.
And even though you're like, you know, nowadays
we can still do video calls.
Yeah, because the thing is, because of COVID, all of this technological advancements in relation to online communities actually expanded like really big, because people really people are really depending on these. People are dependent on all of this. So you could video call easily. It's for free as long as you have internet access. Then why are you still complaining about not being able to meet your friends?
Yeah, and we're not saying that you're being ungrateful. The point is that because it does not substitute physical interaction, you know. So like, but then because like when you are in a visual community and it feels so easy and it feels so nice and so happy and all that, you sort of like start to forget about like physical interaction. And it sort of like takes you away from like the reality. And you can actually see that happening in like physical communities getting like weaker, like, you know, neighbourhoods aren't like, it is so much more often now for you to hear people not knowing who their neighbours are, not knowing what they're working.
I mean, if you don't know who the neighbours are, I don't think it will be easy.
Because like some people know like it's a guy, you know, or a female, or a male, or a child. It's a mother. Some people may know that, but then they don't know them. They don't know the name. They don't even have a name for them to call. You know, like So it's like more and more often.
Or it's my next door neighbour, or it's you know, the guy who lives behind my house.
Or sometimes people will only know the people who live directly
next
adjacent and you know, opposite and stuff, but then they don't know like in the whole community. Like we don't know each and every person in our neighborhood, but we kind of know them in general, you know, like
at least to like pinpoint if someone wants to see someone, you know, they're asking for directions, you can kind of like
that house,
narrow down in that house at least.
We know that person, you know, like go that way. And there is like, if like for example, you know, when COVID wasn't like here yet, so we did have like every Friday when we go to the surau,
every Thursday
night. So like there is like a bunch, because you know there is like a lot of the people in the community who goes there, and so you meet each other. And then, you know, like the people who don't go there, we don't know those people as much because you
perhaps
don't meet.
we know them, but not
through somewhere else, you know. But then like that specific interaction, so you know, we meet. So like all of that creates an interaction. But then with like, you know, the ease of virtual communication, you tend to not spend as much time, because you feel like these other interactions are a lot more rewarding and a lot more worth your time, you know,
because you have like, you share the same interests, you share because you have narrowed down, that's fine-tuned, that's exact same requirement that you want, characteristic yes,
that you're looking for.
So you know, this comparing to the other, it feels like that one's
it's
more
like nowadays
fitting.
Okay, that's a weird comparison, but then nowadays, you know, you have like many kinds of toothbrush, like like hard, soft. I know dentists generally just recommend one type, whatever, but then like, you know, there's like hard, soft, and medium, and like big size, small size, you know. So like you're like, ooh, I want specifically this kind. So you know, like you want to use that, and when you don't get to use that one, it's like it technically still cleans your teeth, but you don't feel so cool, you know. So but then I feel like you know, but then like that brings to the question, like, you know, in a more modern world and all that, shouldn't like is there an importance for us to like really preserve like physical communities, you know, like there should, like, for me, I believe that I don't think like virtual community is all bad, you know, but then it does have its like disadvantages, you know, like for example, when you're like having the spots that you can like look for like ideal people to be with, there's this avenue for you to be with like ideal people, you sort of like it creates, for me personally, it creates a tendency for us to be less tolerant, you know, because you
no longer need to assimilate into that
so
community,
you have these like ideal people, And so when you're not with these ideal people, it is easier for you to judge.
And that not just judge, but act the physical action against them.
Way more disrespectful.
Will be more disrespectful.
Yeah, because you don't really care. Because respect for me is for your own self.
Yeah.
But it is true that often people believe that respect is like for the other person, like how you treat the other person. And if we were to take that notion or that opinion, perspective, if that person doesn't care as much about what the other person thinks or are or is, then the tendency for them to respect that the chances of them to respecting in the first automatically think of respecting them is lower, because
so they'll have to like really navigate their actions manually with each and every single thing.
Like if we are talking about a person who is like well-meaning and not like rude in general, the chances for them, even like the people who are well-meaning, to automatically respect someone who's like they're not thinking of,
because they will think like this is not how the people I usually see, so they're like automatically classified as a weird person.
Like in fact, I can even see it in myself. I think like not virtual communities, but then like because like when I often spend time with a certain group of people who talk about a certain group of a certain topic, when I end up in a situation where there isn't people who talk about these things, I'm like, these kind of people, and that kind of like that natural instinct is like that kind of like effect from having that ideal people,
because you're no longer having this mix of many different people, so you kind of like just stick to this one train of thoughts.
And you can actually relate that to like the idea, the hypothesis that when you go to school, you live in an artificial environment space where everyone's just your peers. And it may seem like people often say that homeschooling people, us, are like less social. There are more the chances for them to be introverted and socially awkward and anxious is higher, because they don't meet with people as much, and like generally the social skills is lower compared to people who go to school. But then there is this hypothesis that actually these people who go to school are only adept in communicating with a certain demographic.
Because that environment.
Because that is the environment they grow up in, So like, but then that aside, because that's another topic, that for me is like, a disadvantage of like virtual community, that kind of like
unable to tolerate intolerance, that's the word.
Like not lower
tolerance towards
So, and you can see like there's less of things like community patrols or
because that used to be like a very not to say popular, but then common and like well celebrated thing around here. Community patrols
around here as in country.
It's in our country. Our mother always talks about how back when she was small, when she was younger, the whole neighborhood will be like celebrating the community patrol night, and like who's going to be the leader tonight. Oh, this guy's going to be leader, right? We're going to gather around in his house. They'll be serving food. Oh, this house serves good food. Oh, this house has nice drinks. All of that community feel. And it creates that bond strongly, because you're
makes that bond stronger,
much stronger. And every time when there's like a thief, they'll be hunting down the thief, and these people who are staying at home will be watching from their windows.
The action's
and
going on.
They're just laughing at because those who are on patrol can't see the thief hiding behind a bush, and they just. Because they can't like scream out.
We're not talking about like these modern days dangerous kind of like machete wielding thieves. There's like those average level 1 thieves.
Yes. Level 1 crook.
So so for me, I think there should be a balance between like the virtual community and the physical community. There should like I don't think virtual community is all bad.
Yeah.
But
it has a lot of advantages and it opens to so many possibilities.
Yeah. But like an overdependence
yes.
Yeah, overdependence or like even like an over immersion into virtual communities is not really cool.
And currently we are seeing a living proof of such because of how people are still having problems because they are not able to interact socially. Despite having full access to well, not all people have full access, but then even those who have those who are complaining a lot of times and who are facing the problems actually have full access to online communities. So
online mediums of communication.
Mediums of communication. So it shows that
it cannot replace.
You cannot replace, yes.
So like,
and you still require that physical interaction with people, despite having many friends online, or like not just friends, but like people to interact with online.
And especially because for me, it is very important. Like even if we are replacing virtual community with like physical community of similar interests, it is still, you still cannot replace that community with the living neighborhood community, because for me it is very important for you to build that sense of community in your community, as in like neighborhood group of people living in one place.
I mean, if you're living in one place, then it has to be a neighborhood.
But then exactly, neighborhood. Okay. So that sense of community in a neighborhood, because of two things. One, your neighbors are the people who are closest to you physically.
Yes.
And these are the first people who can help you out, like you should, and you are the closest to your neighbors, so you should like
you should help your neighbors,
and your neighbors should help you. Like you can see in this COVID time, a lot of people who are like a lot of neighbors do not know that their neighbor is in need of help. Like, well, we're talking about well-meaning people, okay? There are people
and
who
there's even those who know each other.
We're not talking about like the people who just don't care about their neighbors at all. This is as in like they don't want to care about their neighbors. This is just well-meaning people. They do not know that their neighbor is in need of help, because the neighbor won't ask for help because they're not close. It doesn't feel so cool. And then the neighbor not being close. Like A and B are neighbors. Okay, A is in need of help. And B
doesn't know.
Has the avenue means to help A. So, but then B doesn't know that A is in need of help, because A and B aren't that close. They may know each other, they may have greeted each other every morning, but then, well, not every morning, okay. They may know each other, they may see each other, but they don't really know each other. And so A doesn't feel like it's so cool to suddenly randomly ask for B for help. And B doesn't notice any changes in A's life because they're not that close, If they greet each other every morning, perhaps B can realize that a change in mood, or a change in something, dressing, perhaps their weight, went down. Something they could like notice. It's also true that if you're not observant, then too bad.
I'm not observant.
But then generally you would notice, if it's something like
if you interact with them often, you will notice something off.
Like that time when we talked with our father's friend, we're like, he's coughing too much. Is he well?
Even like when I was talking to him, he didn't cough at all, but I could hear that his voice. And it's not like his voice is croaking or anything,
but it's like raspy. And his mood like wasn't like so well, so we're like, is he unwell? So he's not as cheerful, because when you interact with them often, you would sense like a difference.
There's something that's going off of the pattern.
So and then if you're close enough, you might ask, like even if some people just don't feel good asking for help, but if you are close, you can notice, and then you can go like, are you okay? So
and if you say you're fine and you don't need any help, then it's, well, I mean,
no, it's not like but there is that possibility. So
you have the chance.
So I mean, and like in cases of things like burglary, if you're used to each other, like I do not know if it's appropriate to mention this, but then there is this one neighbor we've had who asked us like if we have noticed any particular like things that doesn't go so well in their house, and we're like, what kind of things are you meaning? And they're like, maybe like cries or something like that. We're like, oh yeah, kinda. And then they're like, okay, can you try to observe for like, I can't remember, they give like amount of days or something like that. And then we observe, and yeah, we do hear like in the daytime that cries from children and stuff like that. And it turns out that the children were being abused by their maid. If you're not close with your neighbors, A, you may not even thinking that that's off, and then B, you may not ask each other and stuff like that, and then
for you to help them, it's like an additional task for you, which you will if you're well-hearted, you will probably just help. But then in the first place, for people to ask, it doesn't feel
like, in the first place, even if you're well-meaning, when the person asks, you're like, you're thinking like, is it possible for me to do that? I want to spend my time doing this and that and that, like, even if you're well-meaning, you may not
but
mean
when
anything.
you're close to each other, you're
like concerned. Oh, okay, I'll check it out,
and you'll try to do your best to help them.
Like like that kind of like. And for me, I think, this like what I believe. A country is built out of like societies, which is built out of, is it out of or up of? Built, which is built from, which is made out of communities, or like perhaps bigger communities, perhaps, and then like societies, neighborhoods, and then like families and the individuals.
Yeah, because community can go large.
Yeah, so like you have like individual, and then you have a family, like as in like the people who live in your house, family.
And that's what then builds, because the family will be the one
many individuals build a family.
So
many families living in one area built that neighborhood, and that many neighborhood built like the community that comes after that, and those communities build like this one society, which is a country or a civilization. And to be honest, if like the bond inside the neighborhood isn't so strong, like that relationship doesn't go so well, if that interaction doesn't go well, if like that sense of helping each other and stuff like that doesn't go well, you would cripple the whole country, like, and like eventually you can see the whole earth, because an earth is made of many countries working together, and if countries aren't working together, you have economical crisis, you have wars, which you see,
which we have faced back in many,
we still face now.
Yeah, but like especially many years ago, which
that depends on each individual interpretation. But yes, like once upon a time we actually have like big gigantic wars, that's true. So like big gigantic physical wars,
because diplomatic relations weren't really
a thing
widely weren't really
so, and then like that, so the whole sense, I think, of humanity and like civilization and stuff, it is like neighborhood, and the bond, the strength of a neighborhood is integral to like the shaping of a country, and successively a whole world, a whole nation. So for me, it isn't replaceable. It's true that virtual communities has its pros. The community of similar interests which you can commute to has its pros. Like we profit from it, so much, a lot, benefit so a lot. But then physical community, as in like a neighborhood, is like still very integral and not replaceable, and you should need to strengthen it. That's it, I think, for me.
I think the moral of the story is basically more of the conversation.
That's like a children's storybook.
But the point is, you need to make sure that you first of all, it's always important to care about each other. So who else would be the each other if not those
who are physically close to you?
I mean, sure, you could care about people who you know virtually, but you can't you should. But you can't
that's another pro. Sorry, interjection. Another pro a con of virtual community is that sometimes you don't know exactly who the other person is. These people may be dangerous, but then you may feel like they aren't dangerous because
Nigerian prince.
Sorry?
Nigerian prince, the scammer, the typical scam scheme.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that. I'm sorry.
It's the one that they'll send you an email.
Yes. Okay.
So, that kind of thing.
Yeah. It's true that it can still happen in physical communities, but it's like
it's easier if you do not have that curtain.
If you believe that it is easier to have, if you do not believe that it is easier for that to happen in virtual communities, you should look it up.
Yeah. So, but you should care about each other.
Yeah.
And because you could care, you need to care about people, virtually in general. So, but then you can't really, send direct help if the person is on the other side of the globe. So.
It depends on what kind of help.
Yeah, what kind of help.
But then the point is that you cannot replace the physical help,
Because those will also be the one who will, end up helping you. In the end.
Yeah. If you have that.
Yeah. That's why it's important to have that so that you could secure.
And then also like people in your community, as in like place, would share generally, except if you are living somewhere else, like you moved out and stuff like that, the people who you live with in general, it's like the people who share the same culture as you. Like if you're living in your home country, like these are people who share the same culture and identity and all that. And so it's cool for you to be able to live with people of the same culture and community. It's cool for you to learn new cultures, but it's vital for you to know your own culture and identity and have a space where you build that up, So you want to learn others? Cool. You should also have one
you should
for
also
you.
But then at the same time, it's important to preserve your own. So that's all from me, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. That's the conversation.
It will be interesting to hear your opinion on this. You could leave it through like a voice message or a comment. And I guess until next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.